Hello and welcome back to the Paranormal Podcast. I am Dan Pasella, co-founder, lead investigator, Orange County, New York Paranormal. And thanks for joining us again as we get close to our 30th episode of the podcast, which is a lot more than I think most of the folks thought we'd get to. They didn't think I could keep talking about paranormal topics. Well, they don't know me that well because I can talk about paranormal forever. So for those of you who've been with us the entire time, thank you so much for your continued support. Tell your friends. We're getting, our audience keeps growing and growing, and it's great. If you are new to us, welcome to the festivities. Check out the old episodes. We are available on just about every podcast platform, and there is also a video version of this available on our Facebook page and YouTube channel shortly after the audio comes out. And this week, there should actually be a video version. Last week, there was an issue with rendering the video, and we didn't realize it until we were in the process of publishing. So you didn't get to see my beautiful face last week, but this week you can tune in and maybe not for my face, but for my colorful shirt that I'm wearing this week. And as always, you can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, like, subscribe, all of our videos, all of our investigations. We're heading into a very, very busy summer. So if you want to keep tabs on everything we're doing, go to those sites because we do share the journey as we go. And of course, all of this is available on our website, www.orangecountynYparanormal.com. All right, shilling aside, I want to get into what I want to talk about today. And it's a recent thing because usually I don't have like a long list of, an agenda of topics. This is what I'm going to talk about in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks, in 6 weeks. That's not how I do this. I kind of do it by feel. And the last investigation that we did, which was at the Seneca Falls Historical Society, which we'll talk about a little bit later, a little bit more in depth about. A lot of that investigation was spent trying to communicate with children. And it got me thinking about just how interesting it is when you are dealing with the spirits of children. It is a completely different approach. It is a completely different mindset when you go in. It's one of my favorite types of spirits, if you will, to try to communicate with, because it is so different, and your approach has to be so more focused, and you have to know exactly what you're trying to do, and in a certain way that you try to do it is important. Your methodology really matters, and that's what I want to dive into today, is children's spirits and the differences if you want to maximize communication and you want to get the most out of investigation and interact with the spirit of a child. It's a lot different than trying to interact with the spirit of an adult. First of all, it's inevitable. You're going to investigate someplace that has a spirit of a child roaming around. Whether you are full-fledged paranormal investigators like we are, or whether you're doing ghost hunt events just, for fun, you are going to run into a location that is purported to be haunted by the spirits of children. You have to alter your entire approach. In many cases, you have to alter your entire investigation. The equipment you're going to try to use, the approaches you're going to try to make. You may even have to be very strategic about what investigators you use. For example, when we're in an area where we know we're trying to communicate with children, most of the time I step aside on that. And Emily or Tim or Tracy or Rhea are going to do that. And the reason for that is because I'm a big dude and I talk a little bit forceful, and I can come off as intimidating to living children, let alone spirits of children who are unsure in much the same way about talking to somebody that they may or may not know, talking to strangers, which they're not supposed to do, by the way. We're asking them to do this, and in many cases we are strangers. So the more forceful investigators, even though you want to do it, in many cases it is better to step aside and let someone who is going to be better off with children, who can be a little kinder, gentler, who's more approachable. And I'm not saying that I'm not an approachable person, but in real life, children sometimes don't know what to make of me. Emily is fantastic with children. Tim, Tracy, fantastic with children. So you have to alter that approach. And it's tough because I love that. I love trying to play with the kids. I love trying to do that. It's one of my favorite things to do. But we're not doing this for fun. Totally. We're doing this for evidence. We're doing this to communicate. We're doing this to further the story and to understand the spirits of whatever location we're in. And unfortunately, sometimes that means you kind of have to take one for the team, if you will. And which is why, unfortunately, when it comes to investigating children, I do end up sitting out a lot of it. There are a couple places where I insist on being a part of it because I'm either obsessed with something or I've had interactions in the past. But you have to alter your entire approach even before you start investigating if you want to maximize the communication that you're going to get from the spirits of children who are going to be standoffish. It really comes down to something that we say all the time, which is dealing with the dead is not that much different than dealing with the living. So you approach it the same way you would approach talking to any child. Kinder, gentler, and doing things a little bit different. I have found in our investigation that when we're dealing with spirits of children, trigger objects seem to work better. And I think that's because children are more inclined to want to play with stuff. And it doesn't have to be fancy. Like, they sell these teddy bears with EM detectors in them for like $400 and stuff. And I don't think you don't need to invest that much, to be honest with you. And in fact, depending on the era of the spirit that you're trying to talk to, those things can be intimidating. If you're talking to spirits from the 1800s, a bear with lights in it's going to be kind of strange. And with kids, not many kids are picky about a teddy bear or a doll. And we've used a lot of that in our investigations where we have brought in trigger objects of toys and dolls and games even. We find that children spirits sometimes respond to playing games. And over the years, we've had quite a few interesting encounters, and we've gotten evidence by bringing trigger objects and games into that part of the investigation. Some of my favorite examples of trigger objects and toys and dolls getting a response would be at Grapevine Farms, which I'm going to talk about a couple of times in this episode. And I know I talk about them a lot, but we investigate there a lot. And those spirits responding to playing games and us capturing EVPs based off of what we're doing at the time. One of the first night we went there, we brought presents because it was in November. We were closing in on Christmas, and the store had a Christmas motif going on. So we brought them gifts, and we've got some of the best responses we've ever gotten. EVPs of, can we have one? And even an EVP saying thank you when I said they can keep them. And by the way, they did keep them. Those toys are still there and will be there for as long as we can control it. They're their toys. Don't bring them toys and take them away. I always like to leave it. And even another example, we were playing Jacks one night. We thought Jacks might be a fun little game for them to play. And one of our investigators was not doing a particularly good job of playing Jacks, just not doing what you're supposed to do there. And we actually caught an EVP of a spirit. Now, I don't know if it was an adult or a child, but it's a humorous EVP saying, can someone help her? Because she was so lousy at playing Jacks. And and was it the spirit of a kid? I don't know. But we have captured those childlike responses in locations using games and trigger objects. I'm going to talk about another example or two in other aspects of this where trigger objects have been a very powerful tool for getting the attention of the spirits and getting evidence off of those objects. And while investigating and trying to communicate with spirits of children can be a lot of fun, I also find it to be sad. And I find it can be sad in dealing with these children, because a lot of times you get some tragic EVPs or Phasma box voices or spirit box messages, and it can really tug at your heartstrings sometimes when you get these. A lot of times it seems like the spirits of children are looking for something. They're either, searching for parents, searching for a relative, searching for a way out. A lot of times it seems like the spirits we encounter of children seem to be trapped in some way. And that can be really heartbreaking. I can't tell you how many EVPs we have of mommy and things like that. It's very tragic. And when you get emotionally invested in these locations and in these spirits, at least in my opinion, if you're doing it right, you get emotionally invested. And those kind of things can break your heart. And there also seems to be more of an instance, again, this is in our experience, mileage may vary based on your investigations, but we also find that children spirits seem to have the most occurrences of not necessarily knowing they're dead. And that in and of itself, I also find to be very sad. And as I said, there's just nothing worse than hearing, a voice longing, mommy, like that. We caught that at Grapevine Farms basement. And I still get goosebumps even thinking about it, because of just when I was watching the video and I heard it the first time, I just shivered, because it was just that kind of, wow, that kind of gut punch EVP that you're happy to get evidence, but you'd rather that a child be at peace, or at least find what they're looking for. I think the most tragic in terms of personal that an example of this happened very early in our investigative careers at the Worcester Inn, the now closed Worcester Inn. We investigated there a couple of times before the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the owner, Jim, passed away, God rest his soul. Great man. But there was rumors that there was a kid on the second floor that would run up and down the halls. So we said, all right, well, let's grab a teddy bear and see if we can get this child's attention. They don't know a name. They have nothing on him, nothing. And, put the teddy bear in the hallway and let it sit there. And we got nothing on the first investigation. There was no activity around it. But then when we came back, remember, we leave it there. I cannot recommend enough leaving the toy there. We said, you know what, let's see if maybe in our absence, because it had been about 4 or 5 months since the last time we were there, let's move it. Let's take it up to the room we were staying in on the 3rd floor, which is another really haunted room there, and leave it there and see if that elicits some kind of response. Maybe the child will follow the bear upstairs, and maybe we'll get something that way. And nothing happened in the room itself. But upon reviewing the evidence, I had placed a thermal imaging camera in the 2nd floor hallway, because if the kid's going to run up and down the hallway, there could be a cold signature, a heat signature, something, a footprint on the floor that's a different temperature. Thermal's useful in so many ways. When you do catch something in thermal, it's always amazing. But we caught an EVP, and the EVP was a child's voice, clear as day, saying, "Where's my baby?" In a longing kind of way that just breaks your heart. And we were putting 2 and 2 together to assume that the spirit was referring to the bear that we had moved. We don't actually know if that's what they were referring to, but we moved the bear. We got a question of "Where's my baby?" And then we actually even got a response when we brought the bear back down. We asked where we should put it, and 3 words came up on the Ovilus that just happened to exactly match a location in that 2nd floor hallway. Check out that video if you get a chance. It's on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Worcester Inn. I want to say the investigation was from September 2019. One of our earliest videos that we put out, but. There's a tragic side to all of this if you really think about it. We've investigated with some folks who, you know, get very emotional and actually find it hard sometimes to do this because of the sadness they feel for the spirits that are trapped, or whatever version of trapped you want to use, what in terms of severity. I don't necessarily get emotionally like saddened by the adult spirits, but the children, those kind of things do it to me every time. Another side to this is that kids can be jerks, and so can ghosts of kids. There's a mischievous side to a lot of the spirits because they're kids. They are kids, living or dead, kids. And they like to pull pranks. And there's a lot of haunted locations that talk about a lot of the different pranks that they like to play. And it's okay. Kids will be kids. And a lot of it's harmless. Most of it's all of it's harmless from what we've run into. One of my favorite all-time examples, again, Grapevine, but there's so many different types of spirits there that location fits into almost everything we talk about. So I apologize for bringing it up so much, but it's an amazing location. Tim, the owner, who also investigates with us, he'll go outside 3 or 4 times a year, and the attic light will be on. And it gets turned off when they close the store at night, but he'll go to the building and the attic light's on. And it just happens. And it's just the children on the second and the third floor just being who they are. There's no pattern to it. There's no, like, you know, if it were like a short or if it were something mechanical, those things tend to have a pattern that you can identify. Like the paper story about the Worcester Inn where they thought they had a haunted toilet because every 47 seconds it made a noise. That's mechanical. There's no rhyme or reason to when the lights go on and off. They don't go off more often at some time of the year or less other times. They can go months, and then sometimes it'll happen twice a week. No rhyme or reason. Kids being kids. I think the most common thing we hear about with potential spirits of children is moving things around. You know, the toy store or a toy section of a place will come in and there'll be stuff in the middle of the hallway that wasn't there the night before. And it'll be all those kind of things. And that's probably the most common, that kind of poltergeist activity, by which I mean, you know, spirits that move things, not like the movie where people don't realize poltergeist just means loud ghost, basically. Poltergeist activity is anything that moves around, you know, caused by spirits. But yeah, they like to move stuff around. They'll have stuff make noise. Sometimes if they have enough energy, you know, they'll call somebody's name, and it's tricking them into getting their attention, or maybe even legitimately wanting their attention. But again, it's just kids being kids. One of the things I like to do, if you can try this at home if you're investigating around a ghost hunt, is I like to tell them, let's play hide and seek. And the reason that I do that is because whenever I say that, I'm armed with a thermal imaging camera. So they can't hide from that. So if they are physically manifested in some way in that room or area, the thermal camera or the SLS camera are the two best tools to pick that up. I actually have at Grapevine, we captured the thermal image of a child in the attic, in the same area where the lights turn off and on. After I said, let's play hide and seek, and turn the camera, it's there. 5 seconds later, the image is gone, and it blocked part of a shelf that you can see in the thermal. Like, you can see the shelf normally when I pan to one side. When I come back, the image is there. The thermal shape of a girl is there. When I come back, you can see the shelf again. So she wasn't there long. It's just an instance where I luckily had turned the camera to the right place at the right time, which is kind of half the trick when it comes to investigating and capturing anything visually, is a lot of luck and a lot of trial and error, and that was just lucky. But again, just a kid playing a game with us, playing hide and seek. In that one situation, I had the tool that could see it, and I had the tool that could find them, and I happened to be pointing it in the right place at the right time. So yeah, children's spirits can be a lot of fun, but can also be very sad, as I've pointed out. There is aside to the spirits of children that I do need to mention here. I've never run into it. It's not as common as most dramatic things in the paranormal world are. It's not as dramatic or as often occurring as you might see it on television. But there have been instances where negative spirits will mimic the sound of children to try and lull you into a false sense of security or draw you closer to them. We've never experienced this, but I do know of groups that have. Again, not that common, but it can happen. So when you're in a haunted location and you happen to, through a spirit box or a phasma box or whatever, you get the feeling you're talking to a child, kind of know where you are. If you're in a location where it doesn't make sense for a child to be, maybe you want to question that a little bit. Like if you're in a prison, for example, and you're capturing a child's voice, I might be a little skeptical about that. I might think, okay, is something messing around with me? If you're in a place where, where children just wouldn't be, and you're picking up children, you just have to ask yourself that question. Look, children can haunt anywhere, but again, the mimicking can happen. Not common, but it can happen. So again, like with all things in the paranormal world, you just got to use your head. If you're getting something that makes no sense for where you're standing, you need to ask questions, you need to be careful, and you need to really think about what's going on and kind of get a feel for what's going on. Because that those situations, you don't want to run into that kind of negative kind of thing, negative energy, or a spirit that is a spirit of someone who is evil, could be trying to do something to trick you. Be careful. But all the children spirits we've run into have elicited the emotions I've talked about before and have been all positive investigation experiences. But again, on the show, I need to point out all elements of it. So watch out for that. While we're talking about the spirits of children, I can talk a little bit about the investigation that we did about a week and a half ago. We went back to the Seneca Falls Historical Society. Great place, great people, love going there. We're actually doing an event with them in October. When that goes live, we'll share it on our Facebook, Instagram pages. So if you're interested, if you're in that Seneca Falls, New York area and you want to come out and learn about investigating and, spend the evening with us, having some fun in a great place. It's an awesome place. And this is the 4th year we've investigated there, and we keep going back because it keeps drawing us back. I spent most of my time, again, as I did last year. If you haven't checked out last year's video, go check it out, Facebook, YouTube, trying to get the children to play checkers with me again. There are checkerboards built into the landings of the stairs of the Becker Mansion, which is the building that the Historical Society is in. And the idea was if the children behaved as they went up the stairs to go to bed, they could play checkers. We have captured EVPs and evidence of children in that home. Last year, to no avail. I was there trying to get them to play a game with me, but just because something doesn't work in paranormal investigation doesn't mean you don't try it again. So I did set up a lot of equipment on the stairway. We tried some cool different things to try to communicate with the children there, to try and communicate with Maria, the governess, who is supposedly haunts there as well. It's a interesting location. We had a lot of very interesting experiences and captured some unusual evidence, some new evidence. We've been using some equipment. Use equipment for 5 years. You don't catch anything, but you don't stop using it because one day you might. And that's exactly what happened at the Seneca Falls Historical Society. So we're in the early stages of reviewing the footage from that. I think we set up 5 stationary cameras, and then of course we have 2 handhelds. We have the structured light sensor camera. We have all the audio. So there's going to be a little bit of time there that we're reviewing, but we're very excited about what happened that we were aware of during the investigation. But there are always 2 investigations, the one that we perceive and then the one the equipment experiences. The one the equipment experience is always more interesting. That's why we set up so many cameras. Do we overdo it? Maybe. I see a lot of videos where, most folks aren't using, 5 to 10 cameras like we do, but, to each their own. 10,000 groups do it 10,000 ways. This way works for us. And, but a great location. And I'm looking forward to not only what we find there, but also coming back and working with them to host an event there in October, which is going to be a ton of fun. We love events. I did a whole podcast episode about how we went from hating October because it was tough to investigate anywhere to loving it because now we just do events the whole month. So stay tuned for that. We'll of course, as always, share absolutely everything that we find there in the form of one of our investigation videos. We do with every investigation. And speaking of that, we've got 2 investigations coming up in July. I've mentioned before on the show, we're going to be going back to Hyde Hall because the staff there, we work as volunteers at Hyde Hall to do their paranormal event every October, and they asked us to come up and help them facilitate an investigation. So we're doing that in July, and we're also going back to a location that we investigated at the end of last year, Farmhouse Floral Design. We're going back up there because we've got some questions and that we would like answers to. The owners would like answers to, and they reached out, and we are always happy to go back and do a follow-up investigation because you learn so much, and you kind of know what you're dealing with, and it's a possibility that there are children in that location too. We don't know. We did capture evidence there. So July, 2 investigations there. I know we have at least 1 coming up in August, and the calendar fills up quick. We are back because Emily was out because of her hip surgery, but now she's back in full force, which means we are back in full force. And we love doing it, and it's just great to have everybody back and kind of getting the band back together, so to speak. And in all those investigations to come, as with all the investigations in the past, we're going to run into spirits of all shapes, sizes, ages, races, identities, all of them. And you have to be prepared for all of them. However, as I've been saying, with the spirit of children, you do need to take that extra step, a little extra preparation and consideration if you want to maximize your communication with them. I mean, remember, children, they need to be treated gently and with respect, both living and dead, actually. Treating kids with respect, it's not hard to do. It should be how you always are around children. It should be your normal. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Paranormal Podcast.